The first raven landed on Nerys Vale's shoulder before the court finished tying her to the tree. No one spoke after that. Not the guards holding the raven silk rope, not the noblewomen clutching their silver prayer chains, not the temple boys carrying bowls of black ash up the hill. Even the wolves in the royal escort went still, their ears flattening as if they had heard a sound too old for human throats. That was how the raven tree judged, they said. It did not wait for guilt to be proven. It smelled guilt. It felt guilt. It called the black-winged dead down from the branches and let them tear the omen out of a cursed body until the lie inside had no place left to hide. Nerys stood beneath the ancient tree with her wrists bound above her head, bare feet sunk into blue snow, and her thin gray dress clinging to her knees in the winter wind. The raven tree rose over her like the burned skeleton of a giant. Its bark was black, its branches leafless, its roots twisting through the frozen hill in thick knots that looked too much like fingers. Hundreds of ravens sat among those branches, silent, watching. Below the hill, the court of Black Hollow formed a half-circle behind silver stakes hammered into the snow. They had come before dawn in wolf fur mantles and mourning veils, dressed as if Nerys were already gone, and all that remained was to make her end look holy. High Omen Nerys Vale stood at the front with a shallow bowl of ash in one hand and a curved moon knife in the other. Her white hair fell down her back in thin braids, each tied with a black feather. Her face was severe, beautiful, and calm in the way deep ice was calm before it swallowed a lake. "Nerys Vale," she called, her voice carrying cleanly through the cold. Last daughter of an ill rook bloodline, Omega without a standing pack, accused of carrying a dead wolf inside her shadow. Do you confess the omen? A dead wolf. That was what they called the stillness behind her. Other wolves cast shadows that shifted when their hearts rose too close to the moon. A shadow might bristle when its owner was angry, bare phantom teeth when threatened, or stretch toward another wolf in recognition. Nerys's shadow had never moved. It lay behind her like black cloth pinned to the ground. Since childhood, pack children had dared one another to step on it. Servants washed doorways after she crossed them. Mothers lifted infants away from her path. They said a girl whose shadow would not breathe must be carrying something dead inside it. Nerys lifted her chin, though the rope burned into her wrists. I confess nothing you have not trained them to fear. A stir passed through the court. Valia's mouth curved faintly. Omen girls always sound brave before the birds grow hungry. The raven on Nerys's shoulder tilted its head. Its claws were cold through the cloth of her dress, but they did not pierce. That frightened her more than pain would have. Every story said the raven tree was cruel. Every warning said the birds knew how to find rot beneath skin, lies beneath blood, curses beneath breath. But this raven only watched her, as if waiting for her to remember something first. At the base of the hill stood Alpha King Aldric Varrow. He wore black armor beneath a mantle of storm-gray wolf fur. A narrow iron crown circled his brow. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and carved with the kind of stillness men wore when they had survived too much and trusted none of it. His dark hair was tied at the nape. His eyes were pale gold, sharp even through exhaustion. Behind him lay only the shadow of a man. No wolf shadow. No great black beast stretching from his heels like every Varrow king before him. 3 winters ago, during the Ravenfall War, Aldric's wolf shadow had vanished. The court claimed enemy moon witches tore it from him. Valia claimed the raven tree had spared his life by carrying the wound away. The nobles praised him for ruling without his beast, as if emptiness were proof of strength. Nerys had scrubbed enough blood from council floors to know that when powerful mouths repeated the same story too neatly, the truth was usually buried nearby. Aldric looked at the raven on her shoulder, then at the rope above her head, then at Valia. It was small, that glance. Too small for most of the court to notice. Nerys noticed. So did Valia. The seeress lifted the bowl of ash. The omens against this girl are many. 3 ravens struck the king's chamber window after she crossed the eastern hall. The moon mirror in the Luna Gallery cracked while she cleaned beneath it. A kennel pup was born without breath after she carried water there. Last night, black feathers were found beside the royal bed. The court turned against Nerys with the easy hunger of people relieved to have a shape for their fear. Nerys kept her eyes on Aldric. I did not enter your chamber. His voice came low from the foot of the hill. Then why were feathers found there? Because ravens can fly, Majesty. A few guards lowered their faces. Not enough to laugh. Enough to hide that they had wanted to. Aldric's gaze sharpened, and for one breath, the cold between them changed. It was not kindness. It was not belief. It was the first crack in a sealed door. Valia stepped forward, placing herself between the king and the bound girl. The raven tree will answer better than her tongue. The ravens began to move. Not wildly. In order. One wing lifted, one head turned. Black beaks opened without sound. The tree seemed to breathe through them, branch by branch, until the air around Nerys grew heavy with feather, frost, and something older than fear. The raven on her shoulder leaned close to her ear. Its breath smelled of iron snow and old smoke. Keeper. The word passed under Nerys' skin like a key sliding into a lock she had never seen. Her fingers curled against the rope. "What did you say?" she whispered. The bird's black eye reflected her face, pale and bound, and suddenly less alone. "Keeper." At once, the raven above her wrists pecked the knot. Valia's expression hardened. "Begin the cutting," she ordered. 2 temple guards climbed the hill with hooked silver poles meant to stir the birds into judgment. Before they reached the ash circle, every raven in the tree opened its beak. No cry came out. Only shadow. A silver-black fragment slipped from the throat of the raven at Nerys' feet and fell into the snow. Small, curved, furred, the tip of a wolf's ear made from living darkness. The court's silence broke into frightened whispers. Aldric took one step forward. The fragment twitched toward him. Another raven coughed out a strip of shadow shaped like a claw. Another dropped a piece of jaw. Another released a long rib of smoke. Each piece landed at Nerys' bleeding feet, shivering in the snow, turning not toward the tree, not toward the Cirrus, but toward the Alpha King. Nerys stared down, dizzy with terror. The ravens were not feeding. They were returning. Valia's hand clenched around the moon knife. "Shoot the birds!" No guard moved. The ravens all turned their black eyes toward her. Aldric crossed the first line of silver stakes. "Majesty," Valia warned, and for the first time, warning sounded too close to fear. He did not stop. The air between him and the raven tree tightened. His ordinary human shadow stretched across the snow, thin and wrong, while the wolf shadow fragments at Nerys' feet trembled, as if hearing a heartbeat they had almost forgotten. The fragments rose. Ear, claw, jaw, rib, eyeshadow. They circled one another in the snow and formed half the outline of a wolf. Only half. The shape had no throat, no chest call, no command bone. It opened its jaws as if to howl, but no sound came. Aldric stopped, as if the silence had struck him. Pain moved through his face before he could hide it. Nerys felt it too, though she did not know why. A hollow ache behind her own ribs, a missing sound, a name cut from a mouth. The largest raven in the tree descended last. It was enormous, old, and white-eyed, with feathers like torn night. It landed on the branch above Nerys and lowered its head until its beak nearly touched her hair. When it spoke, the whole court heard. The king's wolf did not die. The half-formed shadow wolf bowed its broken head toward Aldric. His hand slowly opened at his side. "Where is the rest of him?" he asked. The white-eyed raven turned one eye toward Valia. Then it looked back at Nerys. In the mouths that named her cursed. Valia lifted the moon knife. The half-wolf in the snow tried to snarl. No sound came out, and from beneath Nerys' still shadow, something answered instead. The answer beneath Nerys' shadow did not sound like a howl. It sounded like a lock turning inside a grave. The black shape pinned behind her, stirred for the first time in her life. Not enough to rise, not enough to become a wolf. It only rippled beneath her bare feet, as if something buried in it had heard the broken shadow in the snow and reached back out of pity. The half-formed wolf at Nerys' feet lifted its silent jaws. Aldric took another step toward it. The fragments shivered harder. Ear, claw, jaw, rib, eyeshadow. They pulled toward the Alpha King with desperate hunger, but the closer he came, the more the incomplete shape began to tear. The jaw split into smoke. The rib bent backward. The eyeshadow flared white, then black, then white again. Nerys felt the pain of it in her own throat. "No," she whispered. No one heard her over the sudden panic spreading through the court. A nobleman fell to one knee, not from reverence, but because his wolf shadow tried to crawl away from him. Several guards dropped their spears. The wolves in the royal escort whined and pressed their bellies to the snow. Aldric did not look away from the broken thing trying to reach him. Valia saw her chance. "The omen is feeding on your wound, Majesty," she cried. "Do not come closer. It is wearing the shape of what you lost." The half-wolf collapsed at the word wearing. The fragments struck the snow as if thrown. Nerys gasped. The raven, on her shoulder, dug its claws into her dress. "Keeper." This time the word did not feel like a name. It felt like an order. Nerys looked down at the scattered wolf shadow pieces. She did not know the old magic. She did not know why ravens had kept parts of the king's missing wolf inside their black throats. She only knew that the pieces were trying to return too quickly, and if they reached Aldric wrong, they might break him open instead of making him whole. She swallowed against the burn in her throat. "Wait," she said. The fragments stilled. So did the court. Aldric's eyes lifted to hers. Valia went motionless. Nerys felt every stare like a hook in her skin, but she kept her focus on the shadow pieces. "You are not whole." The half-wolf trembled. Its silent mouth opened again. No sound came out, only cold. Nerys's still shadow rippled once more beneath her. A memory struck her so hard her knees nearly gave. A battlefield under a raven-black sky. Aldric on his knees in snow darkened by war. His wolf shadow standing over him, enormous, wounded, still fighting even after the king's body had fallen. Then white temple hands, a silver net, ravens forced open by moon knives. One by one, pieces of the wolf shadow torn away and hidden in living beaks. Not enemy witches, not the battlefield. The court. Nerys blinked, and the hill returned. Aldric was watching her with the terrible focus of a man who had just seen someone else hear his nightmare. "What did you see?" he asked. Valia cut in. "Nothing true. Omen girls borrow grief. They speak with the voices of rot." Aldric did not turn toward the seeress. "I asked her." The court quieted again. Nerys's wrists burned where the rope held her. Blood had run down to her elbows, and the cold was beginning to numb her fingers. Still, for the first time since dawn, she did not feel like the body offered to a ritual. She felt like the only door left unlocked. "They cut him apart," she said. Aldric's face hardened. "Who?" Nerys looked at Valia. The seeress's pale eyes warned her. "Careful," they said. "Careful, or I will make the truth sound worse than the lie." Nerys understood that kind of threat. It had followed her since childhood, dressed in pity, superstition, and law. She answered anyway. "Temple hands." The hill erupted. Valia lifted the moon knife high, and black ash leapt from her bowl into the air. It formed a circle around Nerys, not on the ground this time, but around her throat. Aldric's hand went to his sword. The ash tightened before he drew it. Nerys choked. "Do not be fooled," Valia said, her voice suddenly cold enough to silence even the nobles. "The girl has learned the king's wound and shaped it into accusation. That is what Omen blood does. It enters sorrow. It builds a nest there." The half-wolf in the snow tried to rise. Its missing throat convulsed. Still no howl. Aldric's sword cleared its sheath by an inch. Valia's gaze snapped to him. "If you break the judgment circle before the omen is named, every raven on that tree will become a mouth for whatever lives inside her shadow." Aldric stopped. Nerys saw the trap close around him. If he moved, he endangered the court. If he did not, he abandoned the only witness his wolf had left. His jaw tightened, and for one breath, rage showed through the royal stillness like fire behind iron. The sight should have frightened her. Instead, it steadied her. He was not soft. Good. Soft men died quickly in courts like this. Nerys forced air through the ash at her throat. "Majesty." His eyes returned to her. "Do not call him yet." The words cost her blood. "What?" "Your wolf." She looked down at the fragments. "He is missing the part that knows your name." The oldest raven above her clicked its beak once. Approval. Or warning. Aldric's face changed. Not belief, not fully, but the sharp edge of disbelief broke. "The throat name," Valia said softly. She had not meant to say it, Nerys heard it. Aldric heard it too. The seeress recovered too quickly. An old superstition, nothing more. Nerys' shadow twisted beneath her, pointing like a dark finger. Not toward the tree, toward Valia's feathered veil. For the first time, Nerys noticed that one black feather near the seeress's collar did not move with the wind. It pulsed faintly, as if something inside it were breathing. The half-wolf saw it too. Its eyeshadow flared. Aldric turned his head. Valia closed her hand over the feather. "Enough," she said. "The judgment will continue at dusk. Until then, the Omen girl remains beneath the tree, bound and watched. If she speaks again to stolen shadows, cut her tongue before the ravens answer." A low sound moved through the guards. Unease. Not rebellion. Not yet. Aldric looked at Nerys's bleeding wrists. Then at the ravens. Then at the half-wolf broken in the snow between them. "I will not have her cut." Valia's smile was thin. "You will not have her freed either." The words hung between them. A king without a wolf. A seeress with a knife. A girl tied beneath a tree full of stolen mouths. Aldric stepped closer to the edge of the ash circle. "No." Valia's eyes narrowed. He sheathed his sword with visible restraint. "She remains alive, untouched, fed, warmed if the cold worsens." A bitter laugh passed through one of the nobles before dying quickly. Nerys almost laughed too. Warmth beneath the raven tree. A mercy shaped like a prison. But Aldric's gaze held hers, and she understood the part he could not say before the court. "Survive until I know where the rest of him is." Nerys gave the smallest nod her rope allowed. The ravens settled around her like a cloak of black feathers. The half-wolf fragments sank into the snow at her feet, hidden but not gone. As the court began to withdraw, Valia passed beneath the tree. For one breath, she stood close enough that Nerys could see the feather at her collar pulse again. Something inside it pressed outward. Not a feather, a throat, a sound trapped in black. And from that stolen silence came a broken whisper only Nerys could hear. "Aldric." The feather at Valia's collar whispered Aldric's name after the seeress had already turned away. Not loudly, not like a voice meant for the world. It sounded like someone trying to speak from the bottom of a well. "Aldric." Nerys's fingers tightened against the rope until the raven silk bit deeper into her wrists. The half-wolf fragments beneath the snow stirred at the sound, but they did not rise. They knew that voice. They wanted it. Ear, claw, jaw, rib, eyeshadow, all of them trembled under the white crust at her feet, like pieces of a body hearing its missing throat. Valia kept walking. No one else heard. That frightened Nerys more than the tree, more than the court, more than the slow bleeding at her wrists. The secret was not only hidden in ravens. It could stand in plain sight, braided into a holy woman's veil, touching her throat like jewelry. The court withdrew down the hill in uneasy clusters. Nobles did not speak freely until they were beyond the silver stakes. Guards looked back too often. The temple boys carried their ash bowls with shaking hands. Even the royal wolves hesitated before following their handlers, casting low, nervous glances at the black branches above Nerys. Aldric was the last to leave. He stood at the edge of the ash circle, crown dark against the pale sky, his face unreadable except for his eyes. His gaze moved from her bound wrists to the ravens gathered around her, then to the snow where the fragments had vanished. "You stopped him from coming to me," he said. Nerys was not sure if it was accusation or question. "I stopped him from breaking against you." A muscle shifted in his jaw. "You speak as if you know my wolf." "I do not." Her throat burned from the ash Valia had tightened there. "But I know what it sounds like when something is missing the part that lets it return." The words landed between them with more intimacy than she had intended. Aldric looked away first. Not out of weakness, out of control. Behind him, his human shadow lay thin on the snow, too still for a king with so much rage under his skin. Nerys wondered what it had cost him to stand among wolves for 3 winters without the beast that should have answered every breath. A guard approached with a dark cloak folded over one arm. Aldric took it himself. Valia, already halfway down the hill, turned sharply. "Majesty!" He did not look at her. "You said she remains alive," he said. "Cold kills slowly. I have no patience for slow waste." He threw the cloak across the ash circle. The black salt hissed as the cloth passed through, but the ravens beat their wings once, and the ash fell dead. The cloak landed at Nerys's feet. She stared at it. Warmth was dangerous when given in public. It looked like mercy, but it could become a debt if she reached too eagerly. She had lived too long on scraps of kindness that were later used as proof she owed silence. Aldric seemed to understand her hesitation, though she wished he did not. "It is not a favor," he said. "It is evidence preservation." Despite the blood at her wrists and the birds watching from the branches, a breath almost escaped her that might have been a laugh. Almost. "How generous, Majesty." His eyes narrowed faintly. "You are tied beneath a judgment tree, and still choose teeth." "My hands are occupied." For the first time, something nearly human moved across his face. Not a smile. The memory of one, perhaps, from before his wolf was torn away. Then it was gone. "Survive until dusk," he said. Nerys looked at the cloak she could not reach with her bound hands. "I will do my best to obey the royal command to not die." The raven on her shoulder hopped down, gripped the cloak in its beak, and dragged it closer. Another raven caught the edge. Then another. Together, the birds lifted the fabric and settled it clumsily around her shoulders. Black wool over gray dress, warmth over humiliation. The hill went very still. Aldric watched the ravens dress her. Nerys watched Aldric watch them. It was not tenderness in his face. It was disturbance, as if the world had done something impossible and chosen the wrong witness. At last he turned and descended the hill. Only when he was gone did Nerys let herself breathe deeply enough to shake. The raven tree breathed with her. Branches creaked overhead, though no wind moved. The old white-eyed raven descended to the lowest branch and fixed its mismatched eyes upon her. "Keeper," it said. Nerys closed her eyes. "I do not know what that means." "You were never taught." "Then teach me." The raven clicked its beak. "Bound hands learn slowly." "My hands are not the problem." "No," the raven said. "Your fear is." Nerys opened her eyes. The bird's words should have angered her. Instead, they found a place inside her that had been waiting to be named. She was afraid, not only of dying, of being wrong, of reaching for a power that might prove the court right, of discovering that the dead thing they had always accused her of carrying was real. The snow at her feet darkened. Her still shadow stirred again. This time, it rose no higher than her ankles, but she felt something inside it listening. The white-eyed raven lowered its head. "Your shadow is not dead." Nerys could barely speak. "Then what is it?" "A rook door." The words meant nothing, yet the ravens along the branches rustled as if a forbidden title had passed through them. Before Nerys could ask more, movement sounded below the hill. A temple guard climbed toward her, carrying a wooden cup and a heel of black bread on a tray. His face was young, pale, and terrified. He would not look at her directly. "Food," he muttered, "by royal order." The ravens went silent. Nerys looked at the cup. Steam rose from it, but the smell was wrong. "Not poison." Ash. Old moon ash, the same kind Valia had used around her throat. The guard stepped closer. "Drink." Nerys did not move. "Did the king send that?" He swallowed. The seeress blessed it. The raven on her shoulder hissed. The guard flinched. Nerys understood at once. Valia could not cut her tongue in front of Aldric, so she had sent something kinder, something that would make her unable to hear the ravens by dusk. Something that would turn her into exactly what the court expected, a silent Omen girl waiting for judgment. "No," Nerys said. The guard's fear sharpened. "If you refuse, they will say." "They already say." He looked down. For a moment, he seemed less like an enemy than another person trapped in the machinery of sacred fear. Then the cup shook on the tray, not from his hand, from inside the liquid. A black feather rose through the surface. The guard stumbled back. The cup cracked. Ash water spilled into the snow and hissed, burning a small hole through the white crust. Beneath it, one of the hidden wolf shadow fragments flared. The jaw. It snapped once, soundlessly, at the ash. Nerys started. The old raven spoke from above. "Moon ash seals hearing. Someone fears what you might hear next." By late afternoon, the sky had darkened to pewter. The cold deepened. Nerys's wrists had gone numb, and the cloak around her shoulders could not warm the blood loss from the rope. The ravens pressed close, their bodies creating a shifting wall of black heat. Then the court returned. This time, they brought iron bells. 7 of them. Each bell was shaped like a raven's skull, hung from a curved frame of black wood carried by temple men. Valia walked before them with her veil lowered and the pulsing feather still hidden at her collar. Aldric came behind her, flanked by guards, his face carved back into royal stillness. Valia raised her moon knife toward the tree. At dusk, the raven bells will force the omen to answer. If the girl is a keeper, let her call what she claims was stolen. Nerys's blood went cold. The white-eyed raven dug its claws into the branch. "Do not let them ring all 7, it whispered. "Why?" The first bell sounded. The half-wolf fragments under the snow erupted upward in pain. The second bell sounded. Nerys's still shadow tore open beneath her feet like a black mouth. The third bell began to swing, and from inside Valia's hidden feather, the trapped throat name screamed Aldric's name. The third bell did not sound like metal. It sounded like a throat being forced open. Nerys's shadow split beneath her feet, not wide enough to swallow her, only enough to show darkness moving under the snow like folded wings. The half-wolf fragments at her feet convulsed. The jaw snapped without sound. The rib of smoke bent toward Aldric. The eyeshadow burned pale gold, then black. Aldric stepped forward. Nerys saw what would happen before he did. If he reached for the pieces now, the bells would drag the missing throat name out through Valia's feather, but twisted, collared, and trained to answer the wrong hand. His wolf would return with a leash already inside its howl. "No!" Nerys cried. The third bell finished ringing. Pain tore through her neck. Not from the ash, from the sound inside Valia's collar. Aldric. The trapped name screamed again, so sharply that Aldric stumbled as if struck behind the ribs. His human shadow lashed across the snow, suddenly huge for one breath, then collapsed back into the wrong shape. Valia lifted her moon knife. "You hear it, Majesty? The Omen girl has called your wound. She means to wear it." "I called nothing," Nerys said. Her voice came rough, but it held. Valia turned to the court. "Then let the fourth bell prove it." The fourth raven skull swung. Before it could ring, every raven on the tree dropped one branch lower. A black wave of wings. A warning. The temple men hesitated. Valia's eyes flashed. "Ring it." One man obeyed. The fourth bell sounded. The half-wolf rose from the snow. Only halfway. It had shoulders now, a torn spine, one foreleg made of shadow and moon silver. Its missing throat opened wider, and from that silence came not a howl, but Aldric's name repeated in agony from Valia's hidden feather. Aldric's hand closed around his sword. Valia smiled. "Draw steel inside the judgment circle, and the ravens will take that as confession. Hers or yours, the tree does not care." Nerys looked at Aldric. He was king here, and still every law around him had been arranged to make his power useless. He could kill soldiers. He could break doors. He could command armies. But he could not strike a holy woman in front of a frightened court without becoming the monster she needed him to be. So Nerys did what she had done all her life. She used the place where no one expected power. Her still shadow. She pressed her bleeding toes into the split darkness beneath her and whispered to the half-wolf, "Do not answer the bell." The shadow wolf froze. Valia's smile vanished. Nerys did not understand the words she spoke next until they left her mouth. "Answer only the one who lost you." The fifth bell swung hard. The white-eyed raven screamed. This time, the sound never reached the wolf. Nerys's shadow rose like a black wing and caught the bell note in midair. The court recoiled. The note thrashed inside the darkness, silver and sharp, trying to cut its way through. Nerys nearly collapsed under it. Her wrists pulled against the rope. Blood ran down her arms into the raven silk, and the tree roots under the snow shuddered, as if drinking memory instead of blood. Aldric stared at her, not as if she were cursed, as if she were holding back a blade aimed at his heart. Valia stepped closer, veil stirring though there was no wind. So the old rook door opens. Nerys looked at her. "You knew." "Of course I knew." "Who do you think named your mother Omen?" touched. The words struck deeper than the bells. Nerys's breath caught. Her mother had not died beneath a tree. She had disappeared during a raven storm, leaving only black feathers in her bed and a child with a shadow that would not move. Valia lifted one hand to the pulsing feather at her collar. "Your line was never meant to keep kings whole. You were meant to hold what must not return. Then why are you afraid of me returning it? For the first time, Valia did not answer quickly. Aldric heard the silence. His voice came low. Stop the bells. Valia turned her head. The judgment is sacred. I said stop them. The command rolled across the hill, and every wolf in the escort lowered its head. The temple men faltered. Then Valia cut her own palm with the moon knife and flung blood across the bell frame. The sixth bell rang by itself. Nerys screamed. Her shadow wing shattered. The trapped throat name burst halfway from Valia's feather, a ribbon of black sound shaped like a wolf's tongue. It flew toward the half-wolf in the snow, but Valia caught it in her bloody hand. Aldric moved. This time, not even sacred fear stopped him. He crossed the ash line and caught Nerys's bound wrists before the rope tore them further. He did not cut her free. Not yet. But his hands closed around the raven silk, taking part of her weight. The hill went silent. Nerys looked down at him, breath shaking. His face was close enough for her to see the gold in his eyes fracture with fury. Hold on, he said. It was not gentle. It was worse. It sounded like a vow he did not have permission to make. Valia raised the seventh bell. In her other hand, the stolen throat name writhed like living smoke. If the king wants his wolf, she said, let him hear what the wolf remembers. The seventh bell rang, and the throat name spoke through it. Do not give me back to him. Do not give me back to him. The seventh bell carried the words across the hill. For a moment, even the ravens stopped moving. Aldric's hands remained locked around the raven silk above Nerys's wrists, holding enough of her weight that the rope no longer tore deeper. He did not look at the court. He looked at the half-wolf in the snow, at the torn throat name writhing in Valia's bloody hand. The words had struck him somewhere. No armor reached. Nerys saw it. So did Valia. The seeress's voice softened into something almost merciful. You hear it, Majesty. Even your own wolf fears returning to you. The court began to murmur. Not loudly. Fear kept them careful. But the damage had already entered the air. A king whose wolf did not want him. A king ruling without the beast because the beast had refused. Aldric's jaw tightened, but his hands did not leave the rope. Nerys looked down at him. That was not all it meant. His eyes rose to hers. She did not know how she knew. The sound had hurt too cleanly. True pain was ragged. That sentence had been shaped, sharpened, wrung through iron until it became useful. The throat name twisted in Valia's palm. Do not give me back to him. Nerys listened past the bell, past the words, past the fear. Underneath, something smaller was buried. Not him. There. Her breath caught. Again, she whispered. Valia's gaze snapped to her. What? Nerys stared at the stolen throat name. Say it without the bell. The black smoke in Valia's hand convulsed. The half-wolf at Nerys's feet lifted its silent jaws, desperate and terrified. Aldric's grip tightened on the rope. Nerys. It was the first time he had said her name. Not Omen girl, not accused. Her name. The sound steadied the black door beneath her shadow. Nerys pushed her bare feet harder into the snow and let her still shadow open just enough to catch the echo left by the seventh bell. The world narrowed to feather, blood, iron, and the voice trapped in Valia's hand. The sentence broke apart inside her. Do not give me back to him. No, not that. Do not give me back to them. Nerys lifted her head. It did not say him. Valia's face turned cold. Aldric went still. Nerys forced the words out before the seeress could drown them. It said them. The raven screamed. Not in fear, in recognition. The half-wolf struck the ground with its one-shadowed foreleg, and for the first time, a sound came from it. Not a howl, a broken growl without a throat. Enough to make every wolf in the royal escort bare its teeth at the bell frame. Valia closed her fist around the throat name. The sound vanished. You hear what your blood wants to hear, she said. That is the danger of ill-rook women. They turn omens into excuses. Nerys's wrists shook above her. Aldric was still holding her weight, but he could not hold back the cold, the blood loss, the eyes of the court, or the truth pressing against her shadow. So she used the only weapon she had left. A question. If the wolf feared him, why did every piece turn toward him? No one answered. The court hated questions that did not arrive already sentenced. Nerys looked from the half-wolf to the feather at Valia's collar. If it feared the king, why hide the throat name on you? Valia stepped close. Too close. Her feathered veil brushed the ash circle. Because I guard what kings are too wounded to carry. Aldric's voice cut low. You never told me there was anything left to guard. The seeress turned to him. Would you have survived knowing your wolf was not dead, only divided? That was not your choice. No. Her eyes flashed. It was the council's. The word fell before she could pull it back. Council. Aldric heard it. So did the nobles behind him. Valia recovered swiftly. The war council acted to protect the throne from a corrupted beast. Your wolf had been touched by enemy moonfire. Had it returned whole, it might have torn through the palace before dawn. The half-wolf crouched lower, shaking. Nerys heard the throat name pulse again from Valia's hand. Them, not him. The old raven above her spoke only to Nerys. She will ring the bells again. If the name is forced in the wrong order, the wolf will return mad. What order? Nerys whispered. Ear hears, eye knows, jaw remembers, rib carries, throat names, heart chooses. Nerys looked at the pieces in the snow. They had no heart. Cold passed through her. Where is the heart? The old raven did not answer. Valia raised the bell frame with her bloodied hand, and the 7 raven skulls began to swing by themselves. Aldric released one side of the rope and drew his sword fully. This time, no one laughed. No one breathed. Valia smiled. Strike me, Majesty, and the bells finished the binding. Nerys' shadow opened beneath her like a wing. She looked at Aldric. Do not strike. His eyes burned. Then what do you ask? Nerys looked at the half-wolf, the ravens, the pulsing throat name, and the empty place where a heart should have been. Cut me down. The court gasped. Valia's smile sharpened. If he frees you before judgment ends, the raven tree will claim his crown. Aldric raised his sword to the rope. Then let it try. The blade fell. The raven silk snapped. Nerys dropped into his arms as the entire raven tree opened its black wings. Nerys fell before she could decide whether to scream. Aldric caught her hard against his chest, one arm beneath her knees, the other bracing her back before her torn wrists could strike the frozen ground. Pain flashed white through her shoulders. For a breath she could not breathe, could not think, could only feel the heat of him through black armor and the terrible steadiness of the man who had cut her down in front of his own court. Then the raven tree moved. Every branch opened like a wing. The ravens did not descend upon Nerys. They turned toward Aldric. Valia's smile widened. The tree claims the crown. Aldric did not release Nerys. Let it come. The words were calm. His heartbeat was not. Nerys heard it through his armor, fast and controlled, like a war drum under stone. She tried to stand, but her legs failed beneath the cold and blood loss. Put me down, she whispered. No. If the tree judges you while you hold me, they will say I dragged you into it. His pale gold eyes cut to hers. They already say what serves them. The nearest raven launched from the branches. Then another. Then 50. The court cried out as black wings flooded the hill. Guards raised shields, but the birds did not touch them. They streamed around Aldric in a living storm. So close their feathers brushed his hair, his shoulders, the iron crown at his brow. Only the crown bled. A single dark line slipped from beneath the iron band and ran down Aldric's temple. He went still. Nerys saw it then. Not blood. Shadow. The half-wolf at their feet rose on its one foreleg, silent jaws open, eyeshadow fixed on the crown with hunger so deep it looked like grief. Nerys' breath caught. The heart. Aldric looked down at her. What? They did not hide all of him in ravens. The white-eyed raven landed on the broken rope beside them. The heart was kept where the king would never search. Aldric's face changed. Slowly, as if a blade had entered without making a wound. My crown. Valia lifted her moon knife. Do not listen to her. The crown was forged after Ravenfall to stabilize your rule. You were collapsing without your wolf. The council saved you. The council caged me, Aldric said. The words were low, but the hill heard. The ravens struck the iron crown. Not tearing flesh, not touching his skin. Peck by peck, they broke the black seal hidden beneath the metal. Silver marks appeared around the crown's inner rim, tiny hooked runes shaped like raven claws. Nerys recognized the same curve from the ash circle, from Valia's bell frame, from the feather at the Sirris's throat. Aldric had worn their spell for 3 years, not as protection, as obedience. The crown cracked. Inside it, something beat. A small black heart made of wolf shadow pulsed between strips of iron. The half-wolf lurched forward. Nerys seized Aldric's wrist. No. His eyes burned. It is mine. Yes, but not yet. He stared at her, as if restraint had become pain. Nerys forced herself to sit upright in his arms, though her vision blurred. Ear hears, eye knows, jaw remembers, rib carries, throat names, heart chooses. She swallowed. If the heart returns before the throat, name is free, it cannot choose. It will obey the last hand that held its name. Valia's fingers closed over the pulsing feather at her collar. Aldric saw it. So did half the court. For the first time, fear moved openly through the nobles. Not fear of Nerys, not even fear of the ravens. Fear of how much had been done in holy language while they watched and benefited. Valia stepped back. This is a corruption ritual. The Omen girl has made the king doubt his consecration. Nerys looked at the broken crown. If it is consecrated, why is it bleeding his wolf? No one answered. The question moved through the court, sharper than any accusation. Aldric lowered Nerys carefully to her feet, but did not let go until she found balance. His hand stayed near her elbow, not holding, not claiming, simply ready if her body failed. That almost undid her. She had survived cruelty more easily than care. The half-wolf crawled toward the crown heart. Nerys stepped in front of it. The broken creature stopped. Its silent jaw trembled. I know, she whispered to it, but if you return wrong, they keep him forever. The wolf shadow lowered its head. Aldric watched her speak to the torn pieces of him with an expression too dangerous to name. Valia saw that too. Her face hardened. Then the heart will be sealed again. She flung black ash toward the cracked crown. Before it touched, Nerys's still shadow rose from the snow and opened like a rook's wing. It swallowed the ash whole. The hill went silent. Nerys swayed. Aldric caught her elbow. The shadow wing folded back behind her, larger than before, no longer dead still. Along its edge, faint feathers of darkness shivered into shape. The white-eyed raven bowed its head. Night rook blood wakes under a stolen king. Valia's eyes turned murderous. She is not keeper. She is the door. The pulsing feather at her throat screamed Aldric's name again. This time, the crown heart answered. The iron crown split fully in the snow. And from inside the black heart came a memory of Aldric on the battlefield, begging his wolf not to leave him while temple hands held him down. The memory spilled out of the broken crown like black blood. Snow vanished. The raven tree vanished. For one terrible breath, Nerys stood on a battlefield she had never seen. Beneath a sky crowded with ravens and smoke, bodies lay half-buried in red slush. War banners snapped in the wind. Wolves howled from every direction, but one howl rose above them all, deep, furious, wounded. Aldric's wolf shadow. It stood over him, enormous and black, its eyes pale gold like his. Aldric was younger in the memory, blood running down the side of his face, one hand pressed against a wound in his ribs. He was not wearing the iron crown. He was reaching upward. Stay, he commanded. The wolf shadow lowered its head to him. It did not leave. Temple hands came next. White sleeves, silver rings, moon knives, raven feather veils. Valia was there. So were 3 men in council armor. They did not fight the enemy. They surrounded their own fallen king. A silver net dropped over the wolf shadow. Aldric in the memory tried to rise. No. One counselor pressed a blade to his throat. If your wolf returns whole, it will name what we did at Ravenfall. What did you do? The younger Aldric gasped. Valia knelt beside him and touched his brow almost gently. Saved the throne from a king who would have ended the war before it became useful. Then the moon knives cut into the shadow wolf. Nerys felt the tearing inside her own ribs. The wolf did not turn on Aldric. It fought to reach him. Piece by piece, the temple tore it apart. Ear, eye, jaw, rib, claw. The ravens screamed as the fragments were forced into their throats. Last came the throat name, cut from the wolf's silent howl and sealed into the feather at Valia's collar. The heart they locked into iron. The crown, the memory shattered. Nerys stumbled back into the present, with a cry trapped behind her teeth. Aldric stood over the cracked crown, unmoving. The court had seen enough. Not all of it, perhaps. Not the deepest pain. But they had seen white temple sleeves, council armor, moon knives, and the king's wolf being cut apart by hands from his own side. The hill changed after that. Not into loyalty. Not yet. Into fear with a new direction. A noblewoman whispered. The council was there. A guard looked at Valia's feathered veil and lowered his spear. One of the royal wolves growled at the bell frame. Valia lifted her bloody hand. Memory shown through Omen blood cannot be trusted. Aldric turned toward her. There was no roar in him, no wild outburst, only something far colder. Name the counselors. Valia's chin rose. Majesty, you are wounded. I was wounded 3 winters ago. His voice cut flat through the snow. You made it useful. The half-wolf dragged itself beside the broken crown heart. The black heart beat once, twice, trying to reach its body. The feather at Valia's collar pulsed in answer, holding the throat name away. Nerys felt the wrongness of the order. Heart before throat, want before name. If they let the pieces rush together now, the wolf would wake starving and voiceless, easy for Valia to command through the bell. She stepped between Aldric and the crown. Aldric's eyes snapped to her. For a breath, every watching wolf grew tense. She was an Omega, standing in front of an Alpha King's stolen heart. No one did that and survived unless the king allowed it. Nerys lifted both shaking hands. Not yet. His jaw tightened. That is my wolf. Yes. Her voice nearly broke. And that is why you cannot take him while she still holds his name. The crown heart beat harder. Aldric looked at it, and Nerys saw the cruelty of asking restraint from a man standing inches from the missing half of his soul. But if he reached now, he might lose the wolf a second time. Valia smiled again, seizing the fracture. Hear her, Majesty. The Omen girl denies you your own beast. Nerys looked at the feather at Valia's throat. No, you do. The old white-eyed raven flew down and landed on the cracked crown. It lowered its beak to the black heart but did not touch. Keeper, it said. Ask the heart what it remembers. Nerys swallowed. She did not know the right. She knew only pain, birds, and the strange dark door behind her feet. Still, she knelt in the snow before the crown heart, close enough to feel its pulse. Aldric moved as if to stop her, then stopped himself. Good. She placed one bleeding finger on the iron rim. Not the heart, only the cage. What do you remember? She whispered. The heart answered in a single burst of shadow. Not words. A feeling. Aldric falling, the wolf covering him. A command hidden beneath Valia's bell. Protect the king, but never let him know who betrayed him. Nerys lifted her head slowly. They did not remove your wolf because it was corrupted, she said. They removed it because it saw who opened the northern gate. Aldric's face darkened. The court went silent again. Ravenfall had been blamed on enemy moon witches for 3 winters. The northern gate had fallen from within. Thousands died because someone had let the enemy through. Valia's expression hardened into stone. Aldric's voice lowered. Who opened it? The feather at Valia's collar screamed. The bell frame shook. The half-wolf snarled soundlessly. Valia drove the moon knife into the snow. Black ash erupted around her in a wall. Enough truth for one dusk. The ravens struck the ash wall and burst backward. When the smoke cleared, Valia was gone. So was the throat name. The broken crown heart still beat in the snow, but more weakly now. Nerys swayed. Aldric caught her before she fell, one hand firm at her back, the other still stained with black crown shadow. This time, the court saw him hold her. This time, he did not let go. From the empty branches above, the old raven spoke. Find the throat before moonrise, or the heart will die. Moonrise was less than an hour away. The crown heart beat in the broken iron at Aldric's feet, each pulse weaker than the last. The half-wolf lay beside it in the snow, one shadowed foreleg stretched toward the heart but unable to touch. Without the throat name, even grief had no way home. Nerys tried to stand on her own. Her knees failed. Aldric caught her again, but this time she pushed one hand against his chest before the court could turn the gesture into rescue. I can walk. His eyes moved to her bleeding wrists. No, I said I can walk. Not that I can walk well. A faint, dangerous breath passed through him, almost a laugh and not close enough to become one. Then he released her slowly, keeping one hand near without touching. That restraint steadied her more than being held would have. The court below the hill had begun to fracture into whispers. Some nobles wanted the crown heart covered. Some wanted Nerys chained. Some stared at Aldric, as if seeing the missing wolf had made him more frightening, not less. The counselors who had survived Ravenfall were already backing toward their horses. Aldric saw them. "Close the lower gates," he ordered. No one moved. Then one royal wolf snarled. The guards obeyed. It was small, but the hill felt it. The king without a wolf had spoken, and the living wolves still answered something in him. The white-eyed raven landed on Nerys' shoulder, lighter than it should have been. The throat name runs toward bells. Valia's belframe. Nerys turned toward the old moon chapel beyond the ridge. Its tower rose above the pines, narrow and black, with 7 open windows shaped like raven skulls. She's going to ring them from there. Aldric followed her gaze. Why? To bind the name before the heart dies. Nerys swallowed against the cold. If she seals it into the bells, your wolf comes back, with her command inside its throat. Aldric's face hardened. Then we go. We? A nobleman dared from below. Majesty, the girl should be confined until... Aldric turned. The nobleman stopped speaking. She is the only reason my wolf's heart is not already dead, Aldric said. Anyone who calls her Omen again before moonrise may explain to the ravens why they fear the truth. No one tried. Nerys should have felt safer. Instead, the word truth settled over her like another rope. Truth had weight. Truth demanded proof. Truth could still fail. Aldric wrapped the cracked crown in his cloak and lifted it carefully. The crown heart beat under the black fabric, and the half-wolf fragments followed, sinking into the snow as they moved, hidden but near. Nerys started down the hill. Every step burned. The ravens did not follow overhead like a flock. They moved through the trees in silence, one branch at a time, keeping pace like black thoughts. Halfway to the chapel, Nerys' shadow jerked sideways. Not behind her. Sideways. It stretched toward a narrow gap between 2 frozen stones near the path, where no doorway stood. The white-eyed raven clicked its beak. Rogue door. Aldric stopped. What is it? Nerys stared at the split in her own shadow. I think it is where lost things pass when ravens carry them. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have. From the chapel tower came the first distant bell. The crown heart convulsed under Aldric's cloak. Nerys doubled over as pain sliced through her throat. Not her pain, his wolf's. Aldric caught her elbow. Nerys. The sound of her name in his voice almost pulled her back. Almost. But the second bell began to swing. She thrust her shadow toward the stone gap. Darkness opened like a wing folding inward. A narrow passage appeared where there had been only rock, lined with feathers pressed into frost. The air inside smelled of old nests, iron, and names spoken too late. Aldric looked at the passage, then at her. Can it take us to the chapel? No. She listened to the ravens inside the dark. Under it, the second bell rang. The half-wolf gave a soundless cry. Aldric stepped toward the rook door. The darkness recoiled from him. Nerys understood at once. It will not open for a crown. His hand tightened around the wrapped crown heart. I am not wearing one. You are carrying one. The answer cost him. She saw it. Still, he knelt and set the broken crown in the snow before the rook door. If I leave it, the heart dies. The white-eyed raven hopped down and stood atop the cloak. We carry what kings cannot. 4 ravens landed around the crown heart. Then 8, then 12. Together, they gripped the cloak edges and lifted the broken crown between them, careful as pallbearers. Aldric watched them take the heart of his wolf into the dark. For one breath, Nerys thought he might refuse. Then he stepped back. Go, he said to her. She looked at him. You are not ordering me. No. His voice lowered. I am trusting you. That was worse than any command. Nerys entered the rook door. Cold darkness folded over her, and Aldric followed only after the passage accepted his empty hands. Inside, the world narrowed to feathers underfoot and bell notes shaking through frozen walls. The ravens carrying the crown heart flew ahead like pieces of night. At the end of the passage, moonlight cut through a crack in the stone. Nerys looked through. They were beneath the chapel tower. Valia stood above them in a ring of black bells. The throat name stretched between her hands like a living ribbon. Around her knelt 3 surviving counselors, their palms open, feeding blood into the bell ropes. And behind Valia, chained to the tower wall by raven silk, hung a woman with Nerys' eyes. Older, paler, alive. Nerys forgot how to breathe. The woman lifted her head. "My little rook," she whispered. "Do not let her wring the heart awake." "My little rook," the chained woman whispered. "Do not let her wring the heart awake." Nerys could not move. For years her mother had been a vanished shape in old grief. A bed full of black feathers. A name servant stopped saying when Nerys entered the room. A warning dressed as pity. Your mother followed the ravens and never came back. Now she hung in the chapel tower, alive, wrists bound in raven silk, her dark hair streaked white, her face sharpened by captivity but still carrying the same eyes Nerys saw in cracked wash basins. Aldric stood behind Nerys in the narrow rook passage, crownless, silent, but the air around him had changed. The crown heart, carried by ravens in the dark, beat harder at the sight of the throat name stretched between Valia's hands. Above them, the high Omen Cirrus stood inside a circle of 7 black bells. The surviving counselors knelt at the bell ropes, blood dripping from their palms into carved grooves in the floor. Each groove led to the center, where the throat name writhed like a strip of living night. Valia smiled without looking down. "Come out, keeper." Hiding beneath stone does not suit a bloodline bred for doors. Nerys stepped from the crack before Aldric could stop her. The chapel smelled of old feathers, iron, and prayers that had spoiled in men's mouths. Ravens lined the rafters, but none dared fly inside the bell circle. Even the white-eyed raven on Nerys' shoulder stayed tense and low. Her mother lifted her head again. "Nerys, listen to me. The heart must wake last." "I know," Nerys said, though her voice shook. Valia's eyes glittered. "Do you?" Ear hears, eye knows, jaw remembers, rib carries, throat names, heart chooses. A sweet children's order, but kings were never safe when wolves could choose. Aldric entered then. The bells trembled. The counselors bowed their heads too quickly. His gaze moved once to Nerys' mother, then to Valia. "You kept her alive. I preserved the last full night rook keeper." Valia touched the throat, name with 2 bloody fingers. "Your wolf was too strong to hide in common ravens forever. We needed a door that could hold lost souls without letting them escape." Nerys looked at her mother. Her mother's silence was an apology. Valia turned that silence into a blade. "She begged for your life, you know. When we found you as a child, still, shadowed and hearing birds, some wanted you burned beneath the tree. Your mother offered herself as the door instead." The words entered Nerys slowly, not because they were hard to understand, because they were too cruel to fit anywhere. Her mother whispered, "I thought I could keep you away from this." "You kept me alone," Nerys said, and hated the pain in it. Her mother closed her eyes. Aldric's voice came low. "Enough." Valia laughed softly. "There he is. The king who thinks command can mend what truth breaks." She lifted the throat name toward the first bell. The half-wolf fragment surged from the shadows around Aldric, forming a torn beast at his side. Ear, eye, jaw, rib, claw, no throat, no heart. The ravens carrying the wrapped crown heart burst from the rook passage and circled above, but they could not land. Valia spoke to the counselors. "Ring." The first bell sounded. The wolf shadow's ear snapped upright. The second bell sounded. Its eye burned gold. Nerys thrust her shadow forward, but the bell circle pushed it back. This was not the raven tree's open judgment. This was a cage built for keepers. Her mother strained against the raven silk. "Use my shadow." Nerys froze. "What?" Mine was never dead either. Below her mother's hanging body, a thin black shape stirred against the tower wall. Not strong, not whole, but it opened toward Nerys like a second door. The third bell sounded. The wolf's jaw locked into place. Aldric staggered but did not kneel. Nerys ran to her mother. Valia raised her knife. "Touch her," and the old door collapses. Nerys stopped just short of the chains. Her mother looked at her, grief and command burning together. "Do not touch me. Call through me." The fourth bell rang. The wolf's ribs rose, carrying a breath that did not yet know whose command to obey. Nerys pressed her bare foot into her mother's shadow. Pain tore through both of them. The chapel vanished into black feathers. For one breath, Nerys was inside every raven that had ever carried a stolen soul. She felt Aldric's wolf torn apart. She felt her mother holding the pieces apart so they would not be enslaved. She felt Valia feeding war, fear, and counsel lies into the bells. And she heard the truth hidden under Ravenfall. One counselor had opened the northern gate, not for enemy witches, for Valia. So the king would fall wounded, his wolf would witness treason, and the seeress could save the throne by making it dependent on her. Nerys opened her eyes. The fifth bell began to swing. She looked at the kneeling counselors. Ravenfall opened the northern gate. The oldest counselor jerked as if stabbed. Aldric turned. The half-wolf turned with him. Valia's face went white with rage. "Ring the sixth." The sixth bell screamed. The throat name flew toward the wolf's mouth. Nerys and her mother's shadows rose together, two black wings crossing in midair. They caught the name before it entered. For the first time, the throat name spoke clearly. Not them. Aldric's wolf shadow shook. Aldric whispered, "Then who?" The throat name twisted toward him. "You." Valia drove her moon knife into Nerys' mother's chain. The shadow wing broke. The throat name slipped free. The seventh bell swung down by itself, and the wolf heart, still wrapped in Aldric's torn cloak, began to wake before its name could choose. The seventh bell fell. The wolf heart woke too soon. It beat once inside Aldric's torn cloak, and the whole chapel shook as if something buried beneath Black Hollow had struck the earth from below. The half-wolf rose beside Aldric, larger now but wrong. Its ribs carried breath, its eye knew pain. Its jaw remembered betrayal. But its throat was still caught between Nerys' broken shadow and Valia's bell. The heart flew toward the shadow wolf. Valia lifted both hands. "Kneel." The bell turned her command into thunder. The wolf heart entered the shadow's chest. Aldric staggered. The half-wolf's body became whole for one terrible breath, black and enormous, filling the tower with moon-dark fur and pale gold eyes. But when its mouth opened, no true howl came out. Only the bell's command. "Knail." Every wolf in the courtyard below dropped. Aldric did not. His face drained of color, but he stayed standing, one hand braced against the stone wall. Valia smiled. "Now you see why kings should not be returned to their beasts without guidance." Nerys' mother hung limp in the broken chains, her shadow still open beneath Nerys' feet. Nerys felt the door tearing between them. If she forced it wider, she might free the throat name. If she failed, the wolf would return enslaved, and Aldric would become exactly what Valia wanted, a king with power and no voice of his own. Aldric looked at Nerys through the storm of bells. "Tell me what to do." No command, no pride, only trust. Nerys turned toward the wolf shadow. "Do not command him," she said. "Ask him." Aldric's jaw tightened. He looked at the massive beast trembling before him, at the heart beating in its chest, at the throat still trapped in black sound. Then, the Alpha King of Black Hollow lowered his sword. The chapel fell into a shocked hush. Aldric stepped toward his wolf with empty hands. "I am Aldric Varrow," he said, voice rough. "I lived because you were stolen. I ruled because they made your silence useful. I will not command you back into a cage." The throat name twisted in the air. Valia slashed her moon knife across the bell rope. "Do not listen." The bell rang again. "Knail." Nerys pushed both shadows upward, hers and her mother's, until they crossed like black wings between the bell and the wolf. The command struck the shadows and split apart. Under it, the true name finally spoke, not as a scream, as a howl held for 3 winters. "Aldric." The sound entered the wolf's throat. The beast threw back its head. This time, the howl broke every raven bell in the tower. Black metal burst into harmless ash. The counselors cried out and fell away from the ropes. Ravenfall tried to crawl toward the stair, but the ravens dropped from the rafters and formed a wall before him, silent and watchful. The wolf shadow turned on Valia. She stepped back, moon knife lifted, but her holy calm was gone. I preserved the throne. Aldric's wolf growled, deep enough to make stone dust fall from the ceiling. Nerys stood between them before the beast could strike. Even Aldric looked startled. She does not get to become another hidden death, Nerys said, breathing hard. Let the court hear her name beside what she did. Valia's eyes burned. Mercy from an Omen girl? No. Nerys looked at the broken bells. Judgment without hiding. The white-eyed raven landed on the altar rail. The tree accepts. Raven silk rose from the shattered bell ropes and wrapped around Valia's wrists. She fought, but the ravens did not tear. They bound. Her moon knife fell. The feather at her collar split open. Empty now, no throat name inside it. Without stolen voice, without bell, without fear dressed as prophecy, she looked smaller. Aldric faced the surviving counselors. Harren Valegate opened the northern gate at Ravenfall. Harren shook his head wildly. For the realm, for power, Aldric said. The wolf shadow moved behind him, whole at last, its throat glowing faintly with the name restored. No one interrupted again. Nerys cut her mother down with Valia's fallen knife. Her mother collapsed into her arms, too light, shaking, alive. For a moment Nerys forgot the court, the king, the ravens, and every accusation ever hung around her name. She was a daughter holding the woman she had been told the birds had taken. I tried to keep the door closed, her mother whispered. Nerys closed her eyes. I needed it open. Below the chapel, the court had gathered in the courtyard, drawn by the broken bells. When Aldric descended with his wolf shadow behind him, no one mistook him for healed into gentleness. He looked more dangerous than before, but the danger was finally his own. Nerys came after him, supporting her mother. Ravens followed overhead, not as omens, but as witnesses. Aldric stopped before the court. Nerys Vale was never a death omen, he said. She is Nightrook blood, keeper of lost wolf, souls, and the only reason my wolf returned free instead of chained. The words moved through the nobles like a blade cutting old cloth. Some lowered their heads. Some looked afraid. Nerys did not need them to love her. Fear with truth inside, it was already better than worship built on lies. Aldric turned to her in front of them all. Black Hollow owes you witness, shelter, and reparation. I owe you my wolf's life. Nerys met his gaze. Do not turn debt into devotion too quickly, Majesty. His mouth softened barely. Then I will begin with respect. The wolf shadow behind him lowered its massive head to Nerys. Not kneeling, recognizing. The ravens settled across the chapel roof, black against the pale moon. The raven tree on the hill stirred in the distance, its branches no longer waiting for a body to condemn. Aldric offered his hand. Nerys looked at it for a long breath, then placed her wounded fingers in his palm. Not as an Omen girl saved by a king, as the keeper who had returned his missing wolf and made the court watch the truth come home.